Congressman, good to be here with you today. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the war in Ukraine. The United States has met with Russian officials, but there have been criticisms that Ukraine is not being as involved in negotiations as some feel they should be. How much should the United States involve Ukraine in negotiations to end the war with Russia?
The president has initiated these changes, which is a complete change in policy from 1945 about not only how they deal with Russia, but some of the language that is used. I believe that what President Trump is attempting to do is rechange the look of really a reshuffling of the entire world. In his view, I believe we're learning that he believes that the battle, the fight, the discussion that we're having with China, where China is attempting literally to overtake the United States of America, not just in technology, but also in every single strategic area where the country is involved. Intellectual property, finance, military, intelligence, technology. And the president sees where he's trying to offer a new vision, I believe, to separate Russia directly from China. Now, that's the inside conversation that some in the administration have had with me, that what is being undertaken here is literally a strategic alliance change. What this has done, because we have not really heard from the president, it's caused old relationships for 70 years that we have had with nations who came to our side as opposed to Russia, perhaps as opposed to China, and certainly as opposed to North Korea and the Iranians. Then we wake up to find out that this even took place in the United Nations on a vote. First time Russia has received the American vote along with China, the Iranians, and North Korea. So it's a reawakening to us, and I'm willing to listen and learn. But I believe that the Ukrainians should be treated fairly. No doubt in my mind it was Russia that attacked them, and there's no doubt in my mind that we need to protect the Balkans and Europe from what we have seen as destruction, interference, and overwhelming effort by the Russians and the Chinese to destabilize the region and each country.
So, to what degree, though, do you feel that the U.S. should involve Ukraine in these negotiations? To the same degree as Russia, to a lesser degree? Your thoughts?
Well, I think what I've suggested to you today is the president sees a realignment at the very top, where he is trying to pull apart Russia from China, who he views as a different and far bigger threat, and to find that the United States and Russia spend more time in each other's spheres, where they work together, perhaps on some alliances or things that they could have in common. But I don't envision in the short run where it would be to our best interest, and I know it would not be for Europe's best interest, to switch partnerships and begin trusting the Russians, which I do not.
And President Trump recently called Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator. I'm curious to hear your response to that comment. Do you agree with the president?
I believe that the Ukrainians acted in self-defense. I believe the Ukrainians are brave and strong people. I believe that they took on an overwhelming force and fought like crazy. I believe that the Russians killed innocent civilians, bombed targets, and are guilty of many war crimes. And I am not ready to turn that degree to where we just excuse Russia and say that they were justified.
So it sounds like you disagree with the president in that sense.
I think it's important that you hear me say that the president has some ideas that I believe we all need to listen to and hear. It simply came as a huge shock and surprise to me. And I'm willing to learn where the president's coming from, but from a perspective of my current position, I believe that the Russians need to be treated with very carefully, and that we should not yield to them.
I just want to be super clear, though. Would you or would you not consider Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator?
Of course, I don't.
I do want to ask, that rhetoric, what impact could that have on negotiations, calling the Ukrainian president a dictator?
Well, it destabilizes the region. It gives people reason to believe that America maybe no longer serves their best interest. And all across Europe, I've been contacted by ambassadors who are questioning that relationship. That also has happened with some other countries over the tariff arrangements. And I'd like to say that this is part of the negotiation, but I do not believe that the president is bluffing at all on the Ukrainian issue with the Russians. However, he believes that he can gain a solid end to the war. I'm next worried about and how we're going to rebuild it and what the Russians do next with that enthusiasm that they now share with the president.
And I'm curious, where do you see negotiations heading? What do you see ultimately being the conclusion to this conflict?
Well, I saw that the United States was in a powerful position to be a part of the Ukrainian victory over Russia, that Russia has suffered tremendous losses. 1 in 5 of their middle class inside Russia has had members of their family killed, slaughtered as a result of the unwise conflict that Vladimir Putin has brought on, including total disregard for civilian lives and his own people. And so I saw where Russia was in a diminished position, where if we had stayed together with strength, I think it could have been a clear victory for Ukraine.
And we've seen just today, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that they're planning on increasing defense spending. And we recently saw with the German election, the next likely chancellor, Friedrich Merz, said he's not sure if NATO can maintain its current form. So I want to hear from you, as this war goes on and negotiations continue, where would you like to see the U.S. on the world stage? Is the U.S. having potentially less influence in Europe over NATO a good thing in your view?
I think that we have a clear understanding, or at least had a clear understanding, about the strength of America and our allies. We had the strength of knowing who was on our side, who would negotiate with us, who would do things to make sure peace was achieved. But I believe in peace through strength. I believe in a deterrence that we have with large groups of countries that are called NATO countries and other allies that we have. And I was unprepared for these changes that the president's now bringing about. I intend to listen, I intend to learn, and I intend to draw a conclusion as quickly as I can as we learn more about what's on the president's mind.
And how much funding, if any, do you feel the U.S. should provide Ukraine into the future?
Well, I think that's inconsequential because the president of the United States has indicated it will be at zero. So he would not sign a bill with it there. So that is what is bringing this, what the president calls the end of the war, to end. I simply wanted to see where it would be. There would be a win on our side, not a draw, or perhaps the Russians thinking they won. I think war and the preponderance of the brutality that the Russians brought against civilians and innocent people, they should not gain a foothold in that, and it looks like they may.
Do you feel as though Russia should be isolated by the United States for their actions in Ukraine?
Well, whatever I think is inconsequential until I hear more of the president's viewpoint about what he's thinking, because he clearly is driving that viewpoint.
I'm speaking to you, though, for this interview. I'm curious to hear your perspective.
Well, you know my perspective. I told you that I came as a strong supporter of Ukraine. I consider Russia did, just like I consider what happened to Israel. brutal thuggery by the other side against innocent civilians, against children, against people, against churches. And I, in no way, am going to change my mind on that. But now we have a new president who is trying to end this matter. I would like to see Europe be safe. I would like to see them be secure. I felt like that NATO was a good point for that. I think the president 8 years ago made a decision that they needed to be more responsible for the things that they would do. But I would just say to you that the decisions made after World War II and after the Vietnam War, while it has placed America with, I assume, expensive outposts in Germany, in other areas of Europe, it is still cheaper than war. There will always be bad people. There will always be people who are thugs and barbarians. And I think that having peace is far cheaper than war.
Representative Sessions, is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience about negotiations in the future?
Well, I think we're going to learn a lot in the coming weeks, and I look forward to studying that presentation.
U.S. Representative Pete Sessions. Representative, we appreciate you taking the time.
You betcha.